Hi, my name's Allison Clark, and welcome to another edition of Cowbells and Conversations, Ideas That Ring. My next guest is someone that my friend Alice Tang introduced me to, and she said, you must interview this person. And if Alice Tang tells me I need to meet someone or interview them, I make sure that happens. So our next guest is someone who has specialized in crisis management in her career. She helps companies deal with really sticky situations, but also really focuses on individual qualities that we need right now to get through this time, but just through life. So please help me welcome my guest, Shannon Berg. Woo, Shannon!
Hi, Allison.
Welcome, and thank you so much for joining.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. And I too do whatever Alice Tang tells me to do. So
Yeah, she's a great connector. She was a guest last week, and she's so intentional about people and relationships. And I love meeting people like you. So thank you for taking time to give us a couple ideas.
Yes.
So tell us, you're originally from Michigan.
Yeah.
So we had a Michigan connection because I lived in Lansing for a while.
Yep.
So you're from Michigan. How long have you been in Oregon?
11 years in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon. But prior to that, it was my whole life in southeastern Michigan.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, welcome to the Pacific Northwest.
Thank you.
So when we talked earlier, we were talking about what people need to do, what leaders need to do to really be intentional about this time. So, you know, you deal with a lot of different types of industries. You help them deal with crisis. So can you give people just kind of an overview about what you do? And then we'll get a couple ideas about what's important that we all focus on right now.
Sure. So my company is Berg and Associates, and we specialize in crisis communications and issues management. So what I do is I help companies identify scenarios that are likely to occur and have the greatest potential to negatively impact their organization. Once we've done that risk assessment and we identify 5 to 10 specific scenarios, we start to prepare and plan for how they're going to communicate and lead if those situations happen. And we build toolkits and all types of tools and templates and things that they can immediately access and put to use. But also in the process, we talk a lot about the guiding principles of crisis communication and managing through crisis, and that foundational rooting in those guiding principles is just critical when leaders find themselves in an unexpected situation and they have to respond really immediately. And that's what a lot of leaders and CEOs are experiencing right now.
Oh, for sure. So it's kind of like insurance that we have, you know, for our car or for our house is what you do. You prepare companies and leaders for when crisis happens. And I'm just curious, with all the training that you've done with companies to prepare them for this, how often are they actually tapping into the training and using them?
Very often, and the training that I do really does complement the planning process, and it focuses on those fundamental principles, because what you want to do is you want to make as few decisions as possible when you're actually in a crisis. And here's why. When we perceive a threat as human beings, there's a little part of our brain called the amygdala. It's the size of an almond, and it activates. And the amygdala controls emotions, negative emotions, memories, and the fight or flight instinct. And that fight or flight instinct kicks in, and it tells us to hide or to point fingers or to punch back or to defend ourselves or to blame somebody else. It tells us to do all the things that are really bad to do when you're in a crisis. And so if you've ever seen someone, a leader or a company or an organization, say or do something when they're under fire that sounded really, I mean, gosh, that was so tone deaf, or why did they ever think that was a good idea or a good thing to say? That's what's happening. They're not stupid. You know, people who get to places of leadership are highly trained and experienced and educated. These are really smart people, but it's that fight or flight instinct that kicks in and sort of overrides all of that, you know, skill and knowledge, and gives you that urge to do things that we know from a public perception is negative, and also erodes trust, because at the end of the day, it is all about trust. It's about preserving the trust that you've worked so hard to build with your stakeholders, with your customers, especially with your employees. and even building on that trust. So a lot of what we do is we take the time when you're not in a place of crisis to talk about that, so leaders really understand and can recognize when they're even experiencing it, and also can make as many decisions as possible and even write the words. What are we going to say? Let's do this exercise now while it's easy, not when it's hard and when we're in the moment.
Oh, for sure.
That's a lot of what we do. And a lot of it really does come down to trust. And that's the ultimate goal.
And you and I were talking about that people and companies are being watched right now and how they're responding to the situation. And also actions really speak loudly. So give us some ideas about what leaders can do to really build trust with their customers, with employees, with other team members. How can we make sure that we're living, and acting so we are building trust and really keeping these relationships strong?
Absolutely. So yeah, what we do now matters. Maybe never.
Wait, can you say that again? Because it's so true.
What we do now matters. What you as a leader do now will matter to your organization. And it may not feel like all eyes are on you and what you're doing and how you're communicating, but it will be evaluated. As people look back on this situation, how will they view your actions and words, and how will it make them feel about doing business with you again, about coming to work for you, or about buying your product or service? So what I have told and counseled leaders to do is to, and I know this sounds counterintuitive, because we all right now are experiencing on some level that fight or flight instinct to survive, because we all perceive a economic impact to our organization, to our companies. And some of us are really experiencing devastating effects of that already, and others to a lesser extent, but we all perceive that threat. And so what it's telling us to do is think about and lead with sales and revenue. And what I've told people to do is say, I want you to, for a second, set that aside and think about trust, and let trust be your guide. You want to come out of this having, again, preserved that trust that you have, and being ready to do business again, because people will look back on your actions and what you did and how you contributed and how you took care of your employees and how you helped your customers continue to be able to use your service or product. And they'll look back and they'll make a judgment about your competence, but also about your values. So what is trust? Trust is about the fulfillment of expectations and the animation of values. So what do people, so if you want to think about trust, let's take it a level deeper. What do people expect of you right now? What do your employees expect of you? They expect you to keep them safe. They expect to know what's going on. They expect you to be honest with them, but they also expect your leadership. They expect to be held accountable, right? So what do our employees expect of us? What do our customers expect of us? What do our investors expect of us right now? It's the fulfillment of those expectations. And that second part is the animation of your values. Because what is animation? It's bringing something to life. So if you need to, go to the page on your website that has your values, print them off, and set it right down next to your computer, because everything you say and do should reflect who you say you are.
Yes. I love that you talked about that, because that's one exercise that I also do with my clients. It's like, where is that gap between your values and your current reality? And a lot of companies don't know their values, but the successful ones live it and they know them, and they're using examples. Like, I have my clients talk about them in meetings. It's like, when have you actually been dedicated, and use examples so it's top of mind. But I love that. So one action could be, make sure that you know your values, print them, and keep them top of mind to make sure your actions as a leader are reflecting what you say you're going to do.
That's exactly right. Because here's the thing, and I have to give credit where credit is due. This is an idea that my friend Mike Daphne said to me really early on in this. He's my coach and he's an author. But he said, look, you're a CEO. So you're wired for plans. You have your 2-year plan, you have your 5-year plan, right? And in a plan scenario, you know a lot of things. You know what the terrain is like. You know what time you're expected to arrive. You know what you need to pack and take with you along the way. It is a journey that is mapped.
Yep.
Well, that just went out the window.
Yeah, that's for sure.
because we don't know what tomorrow is going to
Yep.
bring. And we are really in uncharted territory. So all of those knowns are now variables.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have to do is forget about the map
Mm-hmm.
and get back to our compass,
Mm-hmm.
that thing that is in us that tells us what our values are, who we are, and just focus on that next right step. There's
Mm-hmm.
something that got you to where you are. If you're leading a team of people, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an executive of a publicly traded company, there's a reason why you are where you are at,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a compass
Mm-hmm.
inside of you, and that's what we have to rely on right now. And it can be unsettling for people who are, wired for the map,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and wired for the plan. So, and that compass is really about values, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why values are so critical right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. And another thing that we were talking about is that you're being very proactive as far as you're creating an app to help your clients. So you're really looking into the future. And I had mentioned that one of my mastermind group members, Steve Brown, is a futurist. And he said, we will never go back to business the way that it was. And so also for companies to start looking at, what is working now that we've had to, totally rearrange the normal, workspace. So what advice also would you give people about how we think differently? And I love the line, just get rid of the map, follow your compass.
Yeah,
So what would you tell people too, as far as like mindset? Because I've been really focused on what I can control. There's a lot
yeah.
that's out of my control, but like I'm really focused on what can I control and move forward. So what advice would you give people as far as switching our own mindset to what we can do, but also looking out into the future, even though we don't know what's going to happen? What
Yeah.
advice would you give us to be more proactive?
These ideas are so key right now. And your friend, what's his name? The
Steve
futurist?
Brown. Yeah.
Love that. Um, he's exactly right, because we're not going back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
You can forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
We're moving on to a
Yep.
new normal. Things will not be the way they were, for better or for worse.
Mm-hmm.
But we're moving on to a new normal. So what is that new normal going to look like? And how will we talked about expectations, how will those expectations change? What will people expect from you?
Mm-hmm.
And how are those expectations changing and evolving? And how are you preparing now to meet those new expectations? And I think that's kind of where the fun kind of starts. For me personally, it has. I mean, there
Mm-hmm.
are realities that I've had to deal with as a business owner,
Yep.
economic realities, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
But I get energized when I start to think about, oh, this is going to change the way my customers expect me to deliver service.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? And
Mm-hmm.
what am I doing now to build for that new future, that new normal? And so innovation and creativity and so many things are born out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing that in a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders. They're already thinking about, oh my gosh, this changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
And how are we evolving to meet the new expectations that are going to evolve
Mm-hmm.
as a result of this?
Right.
So I think it's okay to allow yourself to also be energized in this moment toward innovation and preparing for the future, because at some point people will be ready to do business again.
Mm-hmm.
And are you going to be ready to lead the way and to be on the front edge of how they want to receive services and what kind of goods and products they're looking for?
Mm-hmm. Well, that
Yay!
is definitely the cowbell idea, because we want our mindset to be, are we going to be prepared? Are people trusting us? And are we really following our own internal compass for what our core values are? But also know your company's values. If you don't have values, you might want to create them now. But
Yes.
really just to trust ourselves. But everything that we do, people really need to be behind us, trust us, our brand, but also the way that we're leading other people.
Yes, absolutely.
So when people want to reach out to you, because I know that some of your clients are being really proactive and getting a plan in place,
Yes.
right now, But if people want to reach out to you to really be more prepared in crisis situations, how can people get a hold of you?
They can visit my website, Berg Associates NW, like Northwest,
Okay.
.com, or they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can find me, Shannon Berg, or email me, sberg, like Sam Berg, at Berg Associates NW, like Northwest.com. And I'd be happy to talk with anyone that reaches out to me. I love hearing from new people. And the one really practical thing that I want to just share right now, on a very practical level, that people need to be preparing for is how to communicate when we are reopening. So right now, the conversation nationally is about reopening. And here in our state of Oregon, the governor has released her framework for Oregon's reopening. So many workplaces are looking at reactivating. It's going to look totally different. And there are going to be guidelines and requirements in place that are going to protect workers and protect your customers. But how you communicate with your employees is going to be critical. They need to hear from you early and often about how you're going to protect them, how you're adhering to these guidelines, where, if they have a question or a concern, you want them to come to you, not file a complaint with OSHA or the state agency. So making sure those lines of feedback are open, that they know that you're leading and that you're finding that balance of candor and confidence. You're the leader, so they're looking to you to do just that, lead the way, but honesty and candor go a long way. So if you know all of these principles and this is all secondhand to you, that's the practical piece of advice I would give you right now, is put your communications plan together for reopening.
Yes, good. And that also goes with trust, because people want to trust you that they can come back and do business with you.
That's exactly right.
Yes. Well, thank you again for giving us awesome ideas on really building trust, but also to be proactive and taking this time to really innovate and find energy from it.
Well, thank you, Allison, for having these amazing conversations with people who have great ideas. You're awesome. I knew we were alike as soon as we got on the phone, and it was like, okay, I like her. We're going to do this when, and it was like all done in 20 minutes. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Good. Well, thank you so much. And we're going to be more proactive and use our compass.
Yes. Thank you, Allison.